Some disclaimers before we begin. There may be some background noise, but hopefully not much. And two, this is being recorded live, so expect some mistakes, although hopefully, once again, not very many. Chapter 3. Alone in the house, Itch, shaking, peered again at the computer screen and clicked on Delete History. It hadn't taken long to find the information he was looking for. A search for arsenic gas had delivered the information he had dreaded. What Cake hadn't told him about the arsenic in the wallpaper is that on exposure to damp conditions it gave off arsine, a gas which had, over the years, caused many deaths. When he read that, Itch thought again of his teacher and 3 classmates still in hospital. From what the head had said, it didn't sound too serious, but could anyone be sure? When was the last time the hospital had dealt with arsenic poisoning? Had they even identified the arsenic yet? The only thing that was certain was that he was responsible. If he hadn't taken his 3 packages to school, and one of them in particular, none of this would have happened. After Dr. Dart had announced the closing of the school, talking about some kind of poison gas, Itch just sat staring straight ahead, not hearing or seeing anything else. Jack had asked him if he was okay, fearing that he too was about to be ill again, but Itch didn't reply. His rucksack was just behind him. He had grabbed it and, excusing himself to Dr. Dart, run for the toilets. He had sat down in one of the cubicles with the rucksack on the floor in front of him. He had to get rid of the wallpaper. He had considered his options, but flushing it away there and then it seemed to make the most sense. Opening his rucksack, he piled his schoolbooks on the floor and fished out the brown A3 envelope. The roll of wallpaper inside was damp, mouldy, and smelled strongly like garlic. So that's where the smell in the loft came from, thought Itch, and held his breath. He pulled out the green roll and started to unwind it. He had only looked at it once before, just after he had bought it, a rather boring length of wallpaper with a green floral pattern. Now it was heavier, darker, and thick with mould. He started to tear off strips and flush them down the toilet. Hoping he would remain undisturbed, he ran from cubicle to cubicle, tearing and flushing until the entire roll had disappeared into the hospital's drainage system. Itch had started to feel nauseous again, so he sat down on the final toilet and put his head in his hands. He heard the main door open, and Jack's voice asked if he was okay. Itch had reassured her and said he would be back out in a minute. With the danger removed and his stomach settling down, he had washed his hands and walked slowly back to the reception area, his rucksack on his back. 3 pupils, Johnny Burnham, Natalie Hussein and Debbie Price, along with Miss Glen Acre, had been kept in overnight. The rest were allowed to leave. The school and hospital arranged transport home for those whose parents couldn't pick them up. Jack's father had driven out. He suggested that Itch should stay with him, but Itch wanted to go home, though he promised to call immediately if he felt ill again. He needed to be on his own to work out what to do next. He had been aware of little on his journey back to the house, save for one question. Should he own up? He hated the thought of 3 classmates and a teacher being in hospital, but at the same time he wondered about the implications of admitting to taking the arsenic wallpaper to school. Not good, he imagined, and certainly the end of his element hunting. Following on so soon after last night's big bang, his mother would certainly throw the whole collection out. If he didn't own up to the school, should he own up to Chloe or Jack? He was sure they wouldn't tell on him, but the risks were high if they let something slip. He needed more information, which was why the first thing he did when he got home was to do an internet search. With the science clear in his head, Itch made himself some toast and went onto some local news sites. They had only a sketchy outline of what had happened. He scrolled down to a quote from a hospital spokesman who had said that all 4 patients were being kept in overnight for observation. As their condition was stable, there would be more information in the morning. Could he wait till tomorrow? Itch wondered. Should he leave an anonymous message at the hospital? He called Jack, who filled him in on some messages she'd had from friends. All the year 9 seemed to be okay now, and Debbie, Natalie, and Johnny in hospital weren't any worse. There was no news of Miss Glen Acre. Itch heard his mother's car turn into the drive. He had to decide now. Hearing her key in the door, he opted for silence. For now. If in the morning his classmate's condition was no better, he would own up. If they were okay, he would keep quiet. It seemed a logical position, and he started to calm down a bit. His mother had picked up Chloe from her friends, and Itch was heading for the sofa with his toast when she hurried in, dropping her bag on the armchair. Let's have a look at you. His mum sat down, tucking some of her shoulder-length hair behind her ear and studied him closely. How many times were you sick? You still look pale, although the lack of eyebrows doesn't help. Itch wasn't sure what that had to do with it, apart from letting him know she hadn't forgotten. Just the once in the greenhouse, but this is the first time I felt like eating anything. He waved his buttered toast at her. Thanks for the long holidays, Itch, said Chloe as she appeared in the doorway. With half term next week, we've now got nearly 2 weeks off. It's a pleasure. We did it just for you. What do you think happened? She asked. Someone told me that Johnny Burnham made a poisonous fly, and that was the start of it. Everyone else just joined in. And how likely does that sound to you? Johnny might be a fool, but he's not going to start eating flowers in a greenhouse. There might have been some joining in, I suppose. It's difficult to say. Itch paused for a moment. There wasn't a lot he could say now with his mother still hovering, and he hadn't decided what, if anything, to tell Chloe. Drew turned on the local TV news. She caught the end of a report showing parents waiting outside the school, and the reporter saying that it would remain closed until they found what the gas was and where it had come from. She switched it off again. Well, Itch, you're a scientist here. What could cause that? If it wasn't Johnny's flower, what was it? This was not something Itch could cope with just now. He was a hopeless actor, and he didn't want to start making up theories. He looked down. I don't know, Mum. He got up and cleared his plate away. I think I'll go and lie down for a bit. Both Chloe and Jude looked surprised. They had been expecting him to come up with a range of hypotheses about what could have caused the mass sickness, but he didn't offer any, and they didn't force him. As he reached the sitting room door, Jude said, "Oh, your dad rang to say that he's coming down tomorrow." It stopped and turned round. "But he's not due till next weekend. He always says he can't change his shift patterns." "I know, he does always say that, but he heard about what happened today and is taking compassionate leave. He's flying down tomorrow and should be here after lunch." As Itch climbed the stairs, instead of being excited as he normally was when his father came home, he felt only dread. More explanations, more lying. For some reason, lying to his dad had always been more difficult than lying to his mum. His bedroom still had that burned smell, even though the window had been open all day. He sat down heavily on the bed, swung his legs up, and put both hands behind his head. He was not at all sure that his decision to wait and see was the right one. Who knows, he thought. By the time Dad arrives, I might have been arrested and thrown in jail. He was thinking of Googling youth prison sentences for poisoning when Chloe knocked and came in. "You alright, Itch? You didn't look that thrilled to hear that Dad's coming back." "Go away, I'm sick." Itch turned to face the wall. "Yes, but you're getting better. What's going on, Itch, is there?" "I've been sick, Chloe, and I'll chuck up on you if you don't leave me alone." "Whatever," said Chloe, and she turned and left. The next morning was distinctly cool for May, and a strong onshore wind was making it feel cooler still. Itch had been awake for a while, thinking about his dad's imminent return. The whole science thing had really started with him. When Itch was 10, his dad had given him an old book he'd found while clearing out Grandpa Joe's things. Itch's grandpa had been ill for a while, and when he died, Itch went to help his dad sort out the flat. He'd had hundreds of books, most of which went straight into cardboard boxes and into the charity shop. But there was one his dad had dusted off and started to flick through. He had handed the book to Itch, smiling. "I remember this from when I was young, Itch. You might like it. Grandpa lent it to me to get me interested in chemistry. It worked. It was probably the start of everything for me. I think it's banned now, though. Too dangerous or something, according to the Americans. Never did me any harm, though Grandpa might disagree if he was here." Itch remembered his dad trailing off, looking sad again. "But if you don't want it," he said, "just chuck it out with all the others." It was a battered, yellowing tome called The Golden Book of Chemistry Experiments by Robert Brent. The fact that it was a banned book had, of course, immediately aroused Itch's interest. He had never seen anything that was banned before. It explained how to turn your house into a chemistry lab, where you could get all the ingredients and equipment you needed to perform the experiments. The first page proudly declared that almost every child alive was fascinated by finding out about things. Well, that's it, thought Itch. That's all I want to do, find out about things. However, he had since found out that the book was wrong in one respect at least. Most kids at his school were not interested in finding out about things, unless it involved a football or shoot-'em-up game. The book concluded with a list of all the 102 elements that had been discovered when the book was published in 1960. When Itch put away his Pokemon cards for what turned out to be the last time, it had seemed totally natural to start collecting everything on that list. He wondered why he hadn't thought of it before. The first ones are easy to find. He'd gone for chlorine, calcium, and titanium. They were easy because they were there in the room with him. Chlorine was in the bleach from under the sink, calcium in a seashell Chloe had brought home years ago, and titanium in his brother Gabriel's tongue stud, which he had left in the fruit bowl at Christmas. Gabriel was 20 and in his second year at Warwick University. He came home occasionally, but always seemed keen to leave again at the first opportunity, all the more so when a girlfriend appeared on the scene. Then came fluorine from the Teflon on an old frying pan, copper from some cable his dad kept in the shed, and nickel in the form of some old coins. Lead had been easy. So was silver. Itch's mum was always losing earrings. He had found 3 before breakfast one morning and had just decided not to tell her. Chromium was next. He had discovered that it covered most cutlery. And so it went on. Once he had found an element, he stored it in a shoebox in his cupboard and put a tick by it on the table of elements in full colour poster that had come with his science magazine, noting where he had got it from. Very soon, however, he needed more room. Stuff like the old piece of lead piping took up half a box on its own. More shoeboxes had followed, and within 3 months of becoming an element hunter, Itch had 32 of the 118 elements residing in his wardrobe alongside his shoes and underwear. According to Chloe, it was a close call as to which smelled the most threatening. Itch's mum tried very hard to understand his new hobby. The first time he had put up the poster of the elements in his room, she had stood and gazed at it, dirty washing in one hand, a mug of tea for Itch in the other. He followed her eyes as they skipped along the rows and down the columns. "It's like a crossword," he said to break the silence. "You can read it horizontally as the atomic numbers get higher, or vertically. The columns of elements are all a bit like each other. Cool, isn't it?" Yes, I suppose so. I don't think I've seen one since I was at school." "Oh, there's been lots more discovered since then," said Itch, and he pointed at the bottom right-hand corner of one section. "Copernicus was only discovered in 1996. That wouldn't have been there in your day." Jude threw her son's pants and socks at him. "You make me sound ancient. For that, I'm keeping the tea." And she sipped it slowly, taking in the blocks of letters and numbers. "It looks like the plans for a rather odd, unfinished castle. These are like turrets, don't you think?" She pointed to the two ends of the table where the columns of blocks were highest. "I hadn't seen it as a castle, no," said Itch. "More like a map, really. Those turrets are hydrogen at one end and helium at the other, you see. And this could be a moat at the bottom," interrupted Jude, pointing her mug to two lines of blocks that underlined the castle. "No, it really couldn't be a moat. Didn't they teach you anything, Mum?" She had shrugged and turned to leave. "What's it going to be, this collection of yours, when it's finished?" "It's not going to be anything. It's just a collection, Mum. You must have collected something when you were young. Dolls or something?" They both smiled. "That is this book which says the table of elements is a collection of everything you can drop on your foot. Does that help?" His mother smiled a little. "In which case I'll take it up with him whenever he gets around to seeing us again. Till then, it's a castle." Itch heard his sister, and a few minutes later his mother go downstairs. It was only just gone 7, but although school was closed, they were all early risers. Itch was just thinking he might stay in bed till his mother went to work when his door opened and she put her head round. "I'm off, Itch. Need to be in Exeter by 11. There's stuff for sandwiches in the fridge and some bananas, and..." She pointed to the cupboard where the boxes of elements were. "Get that lot in the shed. Maybe Chloe can help you. Call me if you feel ill again, okay? See you tonight." "Good morning to you, too," said Itch as his mother went back downstairs. He clicked his computer to life and went to the local news sites he had been checking yesterday. There was no update on the conditions of Johnny, Debbie, Natalie, and Miss Glenacre. In fact, no change to the story at all. He got dressed and went downstairs. Chloe had been watching TV in the lounge, but she came to join him at the kitchen table. "I'm feeling fine, before you ask," said Itch. "If grumpy," she muttered. "Mom says you have to move your stuff out of the shed today. Any news from the hospital?" Itch made a grunting noise which sounded negative, so Chloe returned to the television. Back in his room, Itch took his element collection out of the cupboard and arranged it on the floor. To the casual observer, it was a rather unimpressive assortment of rocks, quart bottles, bits of metal, and everyday household objects. Counting across the row nearest his bed, he had 2 clear test tubes, a battery, the head of a golf club, some children's play putty, a pencil, a sandwich bag with some dark soil-like substance in it, another clear test tube with the cork in. However, on his poster, Itch had written, 1. Hydrogen, my own. 2. Helium, balloon gas, Chloe's 10th birthday. 3. Lithium, AA batteries, W.H. Smith. 4. Beryllium, found on golf course, hole 12. 5. Boron, birthday present. 6. Carbon, 2B pencil, school. 7. Nitrogen, fertilizer, shed. 8. Oxygen, my own. Electrolysis is amazing. They were the first 8 elements, and they were stored in the first shoebox. Itch was particularly proud of the hydrogen and oxygen which he had produced himself. His dad's book had shown how to do it with a few batteries, some copper wire, and a flask of water. Into the next shoebox went an old frying pan, a long thin light bulb, a strip of silvery metallic ribbon, a brass capsule with a pointy tip, a small tub of powder, a computer chip. As Itch put each one into the box, he said quietly, "Fluorine, neon, magnesium, xenon, aluminium, silicon." He was irritated by this box's contents as there was something missing. Ever since he started his collection, he had been looking for sodium, which should come after neon, but he had struggled. This was because the sodium he wanted was highly reactive and dangerous. You usually only got to see it at school when a science teacher would remove a small amount from an oily solution in a jar. He would then drop a tiny amount in the water where it would pop and burst into flames. Itch's birthday was still a month away, but he knew what he wanted, even if he knew he wouldn't get it. He wanted some sodium. Proper sodium. He finished packing up his elements and put his stink bombs in the front pocket of his rucksack. His collection all fitted into 4 boxes in a carrier bag, and he was just about to start moving into the shed when Chloe called from downstairs. "They're all being let out, Itch. They're going to be fine. I just got a text from Arabella and Saz." Itch rushed over to his laptop and refreshed a news site he had been on earlier. Sure enough, the headline now read, "Hospital Releases Academy Gas Victims." There was an image of the CA buildings and an extraordinary photo of Miss Glenacre from at least 30 years ago. He scrolled down. It was a repetition of the whole story from yesterday, but it started with a new paragraph. Cornwall Academy victims of yesterday's mystery gas leak were released from hospital this morning. A spokesman said that they had been monitored overnight and there had been no further symptoms or recurrence of the vomiting. All four have been advised to return immediately if they are feeling unwell. The academy will remain closed until the source of the gas has been identified. Itch realised he had been holding his breath and now let out a huge sigh of relief. His classmates and teacher were okay. He wouldn't be going to prison. As he gathered the boxes together, he wondered quite how long the academy would be shut. Until the source of the gas has been identified, it said. Well, good luck with that, he thought. Opening the shed door had taken Itch 5 minutes. It had warped and twisted so that the bolt was stuck in the locked position. It had finally given way with an almighty creak. Now he looked at the shed's contents, which were jammed into every corner and onto every shelf, and wondered where his kit was supposed to go. He started to pull out assorted garden implements tangled up with lawnmower cable. Chloe appeared and helped to move pots of paint and soggy bags of barbecue coal. They worked without speaking for 10 minutes, laying the shed's contents out on the grass. Then Itch said, "It was arsenic, Chloe. It was in my rucksack." He hadn't planned to tell her. It just came out. He didn't look at her. He carried on tugging at a rake that was caught up in guy ropes. Chloe stopped trying to unstick a tin of emulsion and looked up at him. "Okay. That sounds bad. Well, yes, it can even kill, apparently. But I had no idea, Chloe. Honest." He paused. "I just had some wallpaper in an envelope, that's all. And then it must have reacted with the steam in the greenhouse. I was going to tell someone if they went on being really ill, but I don't have to now." He glanced over at her. "You don't seem surprised." "Well, everyone's chucking up. Some kind of weird poison or whatever. It sounded to me like another of those stink bomb things you let off before, but without the stink. You're kind of trouble anyway. Then you were acting weird last night." "Do you think Mum noticed?" Chloe gave Itch a "what do you think" look. "Unlikely, I reckon, don't you?" "I hope so, especially with Dad about to arrive." "Please don't tell, Chloe. Even Jack. It's all too scary otherwise." Chloe was quiet for a moment. "You should have owned up, Itch. Really, you should. But as they're all okay this morning, I won't say anything now. Of course I won't." They were halfway through some rather raggedy cheese and ham sandwiches at Itch and meal when they heard a key in the front door. Chloe flew out of the kitchen and flung herself at her father. Nicholas Loft was a good 6'4", and Chloe managed to jump half of it. He dropped his bag and caught her in one easy movement. "Hi, Chloe." She had buried his face in his neck, with Mr. Loft's eyes following his son. "Hi, Itch. It's good to see you." He put Chloe down slowly and walked over to Itch and met him halfway. They embraced in the way a 14-year-old allows, awkwardly but still with meaning. Once again, Itch's head was held in both hands and his face inspected closely. "Well, I've seen worse, that's for sure. You still look pale, son, but your mother says you're on the mend. I think I've got most of the story, but tell me what happened." Itch smiled. It was good to hear his father's rich Cornish voice fill the room. Nicholas Loft was a rig superintendent on an oil rig in the North Sea, where he had worked for as long as Itch could remember. He was clearly good at his job, respected and in demand, but both Chloe and Itch hated the amount of time it took him away from them. They had felt this all the more keenly since their elder brother had disappeared to university. It had only been 3 weeks since their dad was last home, but the gaps between visits seemed to have got longer since they moved to Cornwall. Once again, Itch told a story about what had happened in the greenhouse, not trusting himself to look at Chloe. "So you're still none the wiser as to where this gas came from? Any analysis done?" "No?" Nicholas asked, mouthful of sandwich. "In a 21st century school, that seems ridiculous." "Well, it'll be the end of the greenhouse. Can't imagine any other classes going in there." This was all getting uncomfortable for Itch, and Chloe changed the subject. "How long are you off for, Dad? It's strange to have you here during the week." "Just till Monday, Chloe. I managed to rearrange some shifts and took some leave. They all understood." "How's the rig?" asked Itch. "Don't hear much about it these days." "Oh, you know, same old, same old. You've heard it all before. I get bored with it myself. What I really need is a surf. Who's up for it?" Itch had been about to suggest a tour of the rearranged shed, but now thought better of it. He wanted to spend some time with his dad. In the past, Nicholas had always been full of details of the latest drill, but recently he'd been reluctant to talk about work. Itch had grown up assuming his dad enjoyed his job. Now he wasn't so sure. Then, remembering why he had returned home, Nicholas added, "As long as you're okay, Itch. Don't want to get you out too soon." But Itch was already heading to get his wetsuit from the garage. "I'll come down to the beach, but I might sit this one out, Dad," Chloe said. Nicholas was about to remonstrate with his daughter, but thought better of it. How's your mum? She's fine, I think. Busy, you know, a bit stressed. Her father nodded but didn't say any more. Itch appeared in his tight wetsuit. Nicholas disguised his laugh as a cough. Heavens, Itch, you can't go out like that. You'll do yourself a mischief. You need a new one. Fancy an early birthday present? Come on, let's go via town. Itch changed back and the three of them walked down to the main parade of shops via the golf course. On the way, Itch told his dad about the explosion, his eyebrows, and the removal of all his equipment to the shed. No wonder your mother is stressed. Easier on the rig than the air. I'll have a look at the shed when we get back, but it sounds a reasonable plan to me. They had turned onto the high street and had reached the first of the surf shops. It didn't take long to fix Itch up with what he needed, and 15 minutes later they were beach-bound with his new O'Neill Psycho Freak wetsuit and an overly elaborate carrier bag. That's a birthday present, right? Said Chloe. An early one, yes, replied her dad. Just checking. They picked up the boards at their beach hut on the seafront. It wasn't one of those elaborate painted huts you see on postcards and tourist posters, but an all-year working hut, its cream paint blistered and peeling. The Loft children left their surfboards here and considered it their property. Their mother certainly didn't come down, and their father only on occasions like this. It smelled permanently damp and musty. Chloe found an old magazine and followed her brother and father down to some rocks where they left their towels. Itch and his dad ran out into the surf, boards under their arms. They charged in without stopping, reached thigh-deep water, and threw themselves onto their boards. That was the easy bit. Itch could get onto his board as well as anyone. It was what happened next that was a puzzle. He was desperate to be good at surfing. His sister and cousin loved it, but for Itch it was like living next to Wembley and being hopeless at football. The Cornish waves are some of the best in the world. You were expected to master the basics, but aside from the usual tourist style of bellyboard surfing, Itch couldn't do it. He loved the look of his new wetsuit, but he felt a fraud. Instead of being the worst dressed worst surfer on the beach, he was now the best dressed worst surfer on the beach. Big deal. Itch and his father paddled their way out to where the Atlantic swell began, the mysterious process of sorting which would be a breaking wave and which would merely fall back again. They waited for several minutes before a decent one rolled in. Nicholas sensed it first, feeling the undertow and the swelling of the ocean behind him. He used his arms to position the board, making slight adjustments in front of the incoming wave. Itch reacted a few seconds later and was paddling furiously to catch up when he saw the back of his father's board rise with the wave. Nicholas, crouching now, was accelerating towards the beach. In a second he was on his feet and, arms outstretched, waving to Chloe. She waved her magazine back at him. Itch, of course, had missed the wave and was annoyed with himself. He really should have caught that one. It had taken his father all the way in, and he was even now charging back through the surf with the wild smile of a surfer who has judged it just right. Come on, let's get one together, Nicholas called as he paddled his board out to where Itch was circling. They lined up and waited, their heads craned round to watch the approaching swell. As the wave piled higher, they both pushed down into the water with their arms to propel themselves forward. Both boards rose together as the wave arced above them. It shot Nicholas all the way into the beach again. It crashed over Itch. Although his father was encouraging, Itch had lost heart and just wanted to go home. The top-of-the-range wetsuit made him feel even worse. He had no right to wear it. He had come to spend some time with his dad, but now he wished he'd stayed and sorted out the shed. He knew what he was good at, knew where he was at home, and it wasn't the sea. They had only been in the water for 15 minutes when Nicholas suggested they call it a day. Itch agreed and they waded out of the water, pulling their boards behind them. You've got strong arms, Itch. Paddling the board well is a useful skill to have. You'll get the hang of it in time. You forget, I was born here. Itch knew his father meant well, but his words were painful. I'm a good paddler. Wow, you must be so proud, he thought. Chloe threw them the towels and they returned the boards to the hut where Itch and his father changed out of their wetsuits. On the way back to the house, Nicholas raised the subject of the shed again, and Itch told him what he and Chloe had done that morning. He admitted that quite a few gardening implements still needed a home as a result of his takeover, but at least he wasn't going to be experimenting in the house again. Once in the shed, Itch showed his father the boxes while carefully detouring around the surviving dangerous items. The gunpowder and the radioactive claw cans were still in his rucksack, and that hung on a peg where some shears had been. Robert Brent would approve, said Nicholas. Itch looked up. The guy who wrote Grandpa's chemistry book. His father nodded. That's him. Well, I could do with him around here. He might approve, but Mum most certainly doesn't. She'd be happy if I chucked it all away today. Chloe wouldn't be that bothered and Gabriel's not here. I'm interested. Yes, but you're not here either, Dad, are you? Basically, it's me, Mum, and Chloe these days. Itch trailed off. He hadn't meant to sound so angry. There was an awkward silence. You're right, son. You're right. Nicholas's shoulders had slumped a little. It's not easy sometimes, Itch. I get here when work allows. It's important work we're doing, you know. But your mother, well, it's just difficult to... He was struggling to find the words, and Itch wasn't sure he wanted him to find them. Itch changed the subject. Finding a pinkish slice of rock, he held it up so the light caught it. Know what that is? He said. A small piece of feldspar, maybe? So, potassium, am I right? Yep. Itch tossed it to his father, he caught it. Nice piece. Nicholas covered the silence with an unnecessarily close inspection of the feldspar. Look, Itch, I'll make an effort to get down more often, okay? I'll ask, anyway. Any chance of you hanging around for half-term? Oh, when's that? Sort of now, really, and next week. Nicholas sighed. Sorry, son. No, this is just compassionate leave. He looked sad, but then brightened. I had a thought on the way down, though. Fancy some work experience? Not especially, no. What do you mean? Well, look at all this, Itch. You love this stuff, don't you? It's been your passion for ages now. And there's this guy at Chapel, Bob Everett, who runs the mine at Provincetown. He might take you on for a week. Do you have anything planned? Well, no, but what would I do? I'm not old enough to go mining, am I? Of course not, and there isn't much mining going on anyway. They just keep it going for tourists, really. But you might be able to help in the shop. I'm sure Bob would love to have someone keen around the place, and he'd have someone to talk to about potassium. Come to Chapel and I'll introduce you. Chapel was something else they didn't do when their dad was away. Ish didn't mind either way, but remembered that early on it had been the first time he realised that his parents didn't agree on everything. Jude loved to come once and never returned. The rest of the week passed like a mini-holiday, and Sunday morning found all the loss of breakfast. Nicholas explained his work experience plan to Jude, who seemed quite taken with it. I think it's a terrific idea, Itch. Not just because it'll stop you blowing up the house for a few days. I don't think anyone else is thinking of work experience yet, but it would look great on your CV. This was precisely the sort of thing the parents say all the time, but Itch was warming to the idea. His dad will be back on the rig tomorrow, so why not? He might even get some new bits of tin for his collection. So Nicholas, Itch and Chloe set off for Chapel, and Jude stayed behind to work on emails. Itch didn't mind going to Chapel. There was no one his age there. Indeed, no one within 20 years, but that was the point. He was free of the need to try to make friends, then feel. Everyone always seemed pleased to see him. Chapel was a small granite building with built 1787 carved in stone above the door. Inside it had whitewashed walls, dark brown pews, and musty old hymn books. There were no candles, no statues, and no stained glass windows. That's not our style, was what his father said. The service didn't require much of the congregation. The minister seemed to do all the work. When he spoke, Itch always counted the hymn books or panes of glass in the main window. Today he reached 95 and 120. After the service, his dad introduced him to Bob Everett, an overweight, balding man with a ready smile and firm handshake. He was in his early 60s, Itch thought, and quite the cheeriest old person he'd met. So this is Itchingham Loft. I must have seen you a couple of years back, but I barely recognise you. Bob Everett was one of those men who always spoke so loudly that everyone within a range of 20 metres could hear everything. Funny business at the academy this week. Your dad says you was sick, but you're okay now. Is that right? Itch nodded. And he says you're interested in work experience next week. Well, we could always do with some extra help around the place, and as it's half-term we might be quite busy. Better not call it work experience since you're really too young for that. Let's try voluntary work. How does that sound? What do you say, Itch? Before Itch could reply, Everett jumped in again. Actually, you could bring a friend if you like. Know anyone who would fancy it?